Welcome back to the Career Coaches podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, and with me today is the one and only Salomé Rojas, who is the COO of Opny. She was the second hire I made when growing our career coaching business. And what we're going to be talking about today is when is the right time to hire your first employee in your career coaching business? What would that role be? How do you grow and scale the team? What are the different hiring and outsourcing things that you could do? And very operational and tactical, because that's what Salo's subject matter expert is. Just to give you a little context, throw some flowers at Salo. When we started working together over 5 years ago, Salo came in with a idea of wanting to just work here with me for about a couple of months and just kind of serve more of as a virtual assistant type of role. And that quickly scaled not only in responsibilities, but also in the scope of work that you did. And one of the things that we did together a lot was like, hey, Salo, like my job is to fire myself every 3 months, and your job is to fire yourself every 3 months. And that led to us continuing to not outsource, I would say finding people to come into the Opny and then scaling that. So without further ado, Salo, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm happy to be back. It's been a while. No, look, super excited to, have a conversation about hiring, growing teams, which has definitely become a passion of mine for the past 5 years or so. And, to go down memory lane and go over some lessons that I know that we have both got over the past few years. But no, yeah, really, really excited to be here.
So I'm excited to dive into this because one of the most common questions I get is how do I get from our clients is how do I get a Salo? How do I get an operator? There's a book that we really like that kind of really changed the way. It was like the visionary and then the integrator. And they're like, how do I get an integrator? I know that you're very passionate about the integrator role and systemizing and processes and delegation. And so I'll start by saying, as the first question that I have for you is, when should a career coach think about making their first hiring decision?
Okay. That's a really good question. I feel like before I answer that, let me share some thoughts on what an integrator even is for the ones that are not maybe familiar with that concept. This comes from a book called Traction. It really changed the way that we, looked at the business, because only then it actually became a business instead of it just being like a project, right? Or like something that was just between Daniel and I, but actually became a process that we could actually repeat with several people that were coming into the team. So my role as the integrator was basically to own the day-to-day, was to own the operations, was to own what we had already built instead of focusing on the future. That was where the visionary came in. A lot of our clients also ask that same question to me, right? I want to think about the strategy. I want to think about the vision. I want to think about the future. How do I find someone that is able to take care of what I have built? And that is no easy task, right? Because there are a few things that you need to take into account. One is, why do you actually need to hire? Do you need to hire? Or do you want to hire? Do you have enough work to delegate out to this person? And do you have the ability to trust them to then be able to own a process on their own without you having to be on top of them micromanaging their day-to-day? No one that you hire is going to do the exact same job the way that you were doing it before. So you also need to have that level of business maturity to then be able to trust and let go of the process that you built out yourself. So I would say, like, that's the first thing. Understand why you're hiring. Do you have enough work for them to do? And do you have the maturity to let them own a project without you having to, be in the middle of it all the time? That, I would say, is the first thing that you need to ask yourself. But then after that, it's like, who are you actually hiring? Are you hiring an integrator? Are you hiring a VA? Because words have power. And ultimately, how you think about that first hiring decision is going to impact the potential that this person is going to have once they start working with you.
Yeah. And I would say, try to identify how this hire is going to buy back your time. And there's like a really, a book that I love is by Dan Martell, like Buy Back Your Time. And one of the things that I would help do is like understand your buyback rate, and then where are you spending your time doing some sort of a time audit, and then figuring out what are the tasks that you love and you want to keep, and what are the lower value tasks that you can delegate to someone to do. So for instance, for me, and I think this is probably the most common first hire, is someone to manage your lead gen. So appointment setter, SDR, obviously there's different titles that you can do this, but the ultimate is the responsibility of finding people in your ideal customer profile and getting them to some sort of lead magnets or ultimately sales call. And someone to own that, to me, usually seems to be the first hire that I made, and then ultimately our clients are also doing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I guess that going back to what I was sharing earlier, you need to understand what process you're delegating out. And legion and appointment setting is one of the most crucial things that need to be done for your business. So the question that you need to be asking yourself is, if you want to take more sales calls, then how can you scale the number of messages? How can you scale the number of conversations that are taking place on the day to day, then are going to turn in the number of sales calls that you need to hit your revenue goals. And once you hit the revenue goal, then you can go ahead and continue scaling your team. You can continue delegating out the lower value activities that, let's say, you don't enjoy as much. But if you don't have that revenue first and you end up hiring let's say, a personal assistant that is going to be able to help you with your email, but that's not really scaling the amount of sales that you're able to get, then you're not really going to see the return on investment that fast. Right. So definitely agree with you. Lead gen is one of the most crucial things that every single business owner should have. Then the question that you should ask yourself as you start with this hiring process is, do I want this person to stay as a lead gen, let's say, specialist, or as an appointment setter, SDR, in the short term? Do I see the potential of them becoming something else? Because that was part of what happened to us, right? It was more like, let me do this job really good first. Let me build out the process. Then I'm going to hire someone else, delegate that process out. So then I can go and continue working on the different areas of the business that we need. But that ultimately relies on the person that you're able to find.
Yeah, I think it's always coming down to the principle that life is a trade-off of time and money. And so it's like you either are going to have to do things through time, your time, which is limited, and you have 24 hours. And if you need to sleep and spend time with your family, and maybe you are still working full time, your time is very limited. And then you can use money to buy time, right? So to get a VA. I think one important thing to know is, and it's a really important question when you're like, okay, I need to delegate this task out. Example being appointment setting is, do I do this and hire someone just to work directly with me, where you then now have to own the responsibility of training them and doing all that? Or do you then hire a third party agency to do that, right? Because I think, like, if you're solving to saying, hey, I want to delegate lead gen, you can hire a VA, train them yourself, right? Or you can go work with an agency that will say, hey, I'll find a VA, I train them, they're my employee, but you have less control. I think both of them have pros and cons. How do you think about making that decision, and what advice do you have for a career coach that might be listening to this and it's in the verge of, I know I need to outsource lead gen, but don't know what route to take?
That's a hard question, because like I don't think that we have even like figured it out ourselves. Like that's a question that we continue going back and forth on, because the same conversation happens every time that you need to hire either a vendor or solve the solution in-house by hiring another employee, right? So for your first hire, I would say that the first thing that you need to take into account is, how urgent do you need to solve this problem by, right? Because definitely, if speed is the most critical thing that you have right now, then you're better off going to an agency that can solve the problem right away for you. And how much time do you have to actually invest on the person that you're going to hire? If you have more time and you're looking to build a long-term partnership with your first hire, then I would recommend going the in-house route. Because if you don't have the time, then it's ultimately going to be a lose-lose, right? Like, you're not going to have enough time to develop, invest, give them feedback, make sure that they continue, getting better and better at their job every day. And that person is also going to end up being frustrated because they're not getting enough from you, right? So they're also not growing, they're also not learning, right? So I would say, if you have the time, hire in-house, figure it out yourself, build a relationship, build a process together as you go. If you don't have the time and you need to go fast, then you're better off finding an agency that will take care of it for you. But I'm not sure if you disagree.
No, I think I agree. And I don't know that there is a right answer that you should always hire and do it all internally, or the right answer is hire an agency. I think it depends on the factor of, have you solved this problem before? So, like, do you already know how to bring in somebody brand new and train them in the appointment setting role? Or is this something that you want to hire an agency to do because they have expertise in the appointment setting role itself, right? The second is, do you have time to train them? Because you're like, hey, it's like this like tricky part of like, I need to hire someone to do appointment setting, but because I don't have enough time to do it, you can't just think that you're going to go hire someone in week one. They're going to be doing the same amount of leads than you're doing and having the same conversion rate and generating the same number of sales calls. Like, it's going to be you spending probably at least 2 to 3 weeks ramping them up before you could do that and not skipping. So like, I think there's a framework that we use is like the 4 Ds of delegation. It's like, I'll do the job, they'll watch you do it, then we do together. So before that, like when I do the job and they watch, I'm essentially doing the job 90+% of the time. And then the new hire is doing 10% of the time. And then we do together is I do 50%, they do 50%. Like I'll do one lead, they do one lead. I do one lead, they do one lead. Yep. And then as they do, you watch, where they're doing it and you're watching it, but they're doing probably 90+% of the work, but you're actively watching. And then as you build the capability, then it goes into they do, and then you check, which is now more about the quality control, where they're doing 99% of the work and you do 1%. And obviously the easier task it is that you can go through those 4 Ds in 2 days, right? Like checking someone's email, you can probably do that in 1 hour, right? But the harder the task is, for example, ramping up a new salesperson, if they have no sales experience, that could take 3 months, right? But if they already have experience selling a high ticket career coaching offer, that's still going to take about 2 weeks. So the ramp up period might change, right? And on it, any thoughts?
No, 100%. You bring up something that's really important, is understanding who the person that you hired is. Mm-hmm. What are the capabilities that they're bringing to the team? What are the things that they need to learn that maybe another person that you have trained before didn't have to go through that process? Because I wouldn't say that training is something that it's always going to be the same process with every single hire. Like you need to have built-in adaptability to then work with the strengths of the person that you have just brought into the team, instead of just trying to put them into this mold. This is how it's done, because you're basically setting them up for failure. So really understand who is it that you brought in, what do they know about the process that you're about to delegate, and then execute the 4 Ds of delegation. You might think that if they have a lot of experience, then you won't have to go through that process, but we have found time and time again that that's not necessarily true. Even if you speed it up, even if you're able to complete the whole 4 Ds in a few days or even a week, then that's better than trying to skip something because you assume that because of their previous experience, then they have already acquired that skill. So yeah, it's all about understanding who you're working with, the capabilities that they bring, the strengths that they have, and how are you going to help them get to know the task that now you're hoping to delegate out.
So I want us to pivot this conversation to a couple of things. One, I want us to dive into, let's say we made the decision of hiring someone new. What are the things that we need to do before we even post a job? What do we do during the interview process? What should we look for? Red flags, green flags? And then we kind of talked a little bit about the onboarding, but maybe we dive into a little bit deeper about that.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about the before. Like, how do we even make the decision of hiring someone? I feel like there are 2 types of hires. You could either be really proactive about it because it's a role that you hire on based on, the scale of your team, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say that if you get more clients and you need more help with client success, so it makes sense to hire another CSM, a client success manager. Or let's say that if you have a lot of sales calls and you need another closer, then you go and you hire another closer. But it's a process that you know pretty much how it will turn out, mm-hmm. right? Because you have done it a few times already. Yep. So you could either do a proactive hire. So it's like the numbers are showing you that, over the next few weeks, the next few months, you're gonna need another person that is executing the same role. So that could be one aspect of it. But we also know that sometimes we have to do reactive hires, right? Like a change in the process, a change in the team, someone decides to leave, right? Or like just the way they fundamentally do the process changes, and that forces you to go and look for someone. So I would say that that's the first thing that you need to know. Are you hiring proactively for a role that you have already hired for in the past? Or is it more reactive? Mm-hmm. For the 2 of them, something that I want you all to take into account is how many hours of work do you actually have? So going back to the whole buy back your time theory, if you haven't read that book, make sure to check it out. It's a really good one. But you need to make sure that this person actually has enough to justify the investment of your business, mm-hmm. of hiring someone full-time or part-time or whatever that is. right? Because if you think that you may need something, but that project can be executed within, let's say, 5 hours a week, then it doesn't make sense for you to go ahead and hire a full-time person, go through the whole recruiting cycle, which is an investment at the end
Yeah.
of the day, both in time and resources, right? To then not be able to actually see the return on investment of the person that you're hiring. So make sure that you understand how many hours of work do they have. Build a job description, not a job description ideally built out by ChatGPT, right? We don't want AI yet involved into this. Try to explain it in real simple terms, right? How would you explain the day-to-day out to someone else? What do you expect out of this person? How do they either save your company money or make your company money? Try to make it really clear so then you're not going to be disappointed at the end of the recruiting process. That's what I would do first. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you got to think about the recruitment process like you do a sales funnel. Like you need to have a very clear offer. Like what is the job description?
Yeah.
What's in it for you? You know that. But also even more importantly, what's in it for them, right? What is it that you're trying to do when it's also understand both the type of personality traits. Like for us is understanding the core values as a company. Like what is our core values? Like we always want to dream big and execute smart. We want to have a grit mentality and we want to be relentlessly people focused. We want to make sure we are hiring culturally as well, not just capability wise. And also, what are the minimum requirements or qualifications for this role? And then from there, build the job description or the offer that we want to do. And then from the next step, then it's to your point, like we then want to go and start finding applications. So post on LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster. You can start trying to get people that you know to post this for you. Or if you have career coaches in your network that have VAs, they can ask them for their friends' referrals. Or you can go to a company like Grit that like you pay them like a staffing fee. And they'll find you and guarantee you a really good hire that will stick with you for at least 6 months, right? So there's agencies that can do that too.
Let's talk a little bit more about that because I feel like that's a question that I continue to get time and time again. Like, where do I actually find a team member?
Yeah.
I understand that as a career coach that might be just starting out, you don't have the budget to, let's say, go and hire someone that has a lot of experience that is located in the same city as you are. So that tends to be a constraint that I hear time and time again. The good thing is that that shouldn't be the reason why you can't scale out your business. You just need to go about it in a different way. You might not be able to, let's say, hire one of your friends to come and do this for you, but you can definitely afford to hire someone abroad, probably, that it's going to treat your business as their own. But all of it depends on how are you thinking about that person that you want to bring in, what type of capabilities and attitudes and overall values are you hoping this person to have. So then whenever you actually bring them on and you start working together, then you have a value match. You know how to work together. You know how to continue moving forward. So I would say that right now LinkedIn, it's probably the most efficient way for a lot of coaches to go out and post their role. You can definitely go and filter by the location in which you're hiring. I would suggest that you look for someone that is located in the same time zone as you are. I know that you could get different rates all around different countries depending on what you're looking for, but something that I've seen can increase the likelihood of success is having someone that is located in the same time zone. Post it on LinkedIn or go through an agency. That's definitely going to save you a lot of work in overall back and forth with any candidates. But yeah, it's more about understanding what's your budget, right?
Yep.
What do you need them to do, and what's ultimately the potential that you want this person to have. And then you go through the whole recruiting process, right?
Yep.
Which can look a little bit different depending on the role that you're hiring for, right? We try to include a few rounds of interviews. Of course, our team is a lot better than it was when we first started. I remember my interview was with the who did I have a first interview with? The guy that introduced the two of us. I only talked to him once.
Sareem.
Sareem, shout out to you if you're watching this. And then a second interview with you, and I started with you the next day, right? So it's not like you have to have a super complicated interviewing process. If you have found someone that you find a value match, right, and that you see based on their experience that they're going to be able to do the work. But of course, the more high up the role is, the bigger that your company gets, then you start adding a few more filters into the process.
And look, here's what I would say is like most of the times that we're working with clients, they are coming in with 20, 30, 40 years of corporate experience. They've done hiring in a Fortune 1000 scope, right? And they have a recruiter and an HR team, and they're maybe even the hiring manager, or they were the recruiter. And you have to remember that unfortunately or fortunately, how it's done in big companies is very difficult. Interviewing someone that has 10 years of experience and a 4-year degree in America, then you're interviewing a VA in a different country. And so like, I think that's a really good understanding of like the expectations that you have from hiring someone making 6 figures in your corporate environment is very different than somebody that you're bringing in to hire that you're going to pay them $1,000 to $2,000 a month, right? And so understand that, right? Also, what is it that they're going to do? To me, especially earlier on, I would hire more for the character, the motivation, the drive. Are they coachable? Is this someone that you can see that you can work with and have a good working relationship with? Because you could build the capabilities, especially if you're being proactive about this. Obviously, this becomes very different if you're reactive and you're hiring because you need to solve a problem, and then so try to avoid that as much as possible. But also, I also think like if you it's not a bad idea to work with an agency to hire your first person. Like I think I did that with Serene. That's kind of how I found Salo. Like we built in that capability in house, and the only after Salo we then hire everybody else ourselves. So I would say there's no right or wrong, especially like if you have a lot of experience hiring and recruiting, and this is your bread and butter, then you know this. Like I think you would know this better than us. But is there any biggest like we've helped, I think at this point, we probably hire anywhere between 30 to 50 people either for ourselves or our clients or even our portfolio companies. What would be some of the biggest mistakes that you see either we've made or our clients have made hiring their first VA that we can share that people can avoid?
Loaded question. One, I would say, and that's why I'm making such a big deal of it, but it's not having clarity over what you expect. If you don't know your expectation, then it's impossible, regardless of how talented the individual is, to actually match that expectation. So that's a mistake that we have made before, right? Like we didn't really know what we were hiring for, and I know that has happened to our team too, right? If you don't really know what you want this person to do, you don't know what's the ROI that you're hoping to get, and then you get frustrated 2-3 months after they're part of the team that they are not really pulling in their work, then that's probably more of your fault than it is theirs, right? So that's definitely one big lesson, right? Like make sure that you set a really clear expectation and you communicated that expectation throughout the recruiting process, the training process, and then as you continue to build a relationship with them inside your team. I would say that's one. And then what else can I think of? Skipping training. That is a mistake that I see a lot of coaches do, especially if they are being a bit more reactive about the role that they're hiring for. I know that you're busy. I know that the reason why you need to hire someone to delegate a task is because you need your time back, and that's totally fine. But if you skip that crucial first few weeks of actually delegating the task out and implementing the 4Ds that we were talking about before, then you're only creating more work for you in the future. So if you skip training, you're making a big mistake. We have also done that ourselves, right? Like that's a lesson that we have learned. And then I would say thinking that training stops at the first month of this new hire. Because the goal is for you to continue to develop that person, because they're going to continue encountering new problems. They're going to find better ways of doing the process. And if you're not building a safe space for them to be able to communicate when they don't know how to do something, or if they have found a better way of going about the process that you created, then you're always going to be stuck at the same level, right? So that would be the third thing. Your training process doesn't stop. It's actually something that it's ongoing, that you need to continue creating a space and a priority in your calendar for that, to then be able to actually empower this person to own a department instead of just owning one of the tasks that you delegated out.
Yeah, I think that is a mistake of not like understanding that the more training and the more time you're able to create to spend with this person, it becomes a multiplying factor. I think like I've done a lot of great things and a lot of bad things when it comes to hiring. But I think like when I think about your growth from like hiring you as an appointment setter to where now you essentially do all of the hiring for our business, it's the idea of like trying to pour as much as I can into you, and how that's multiplied because you essentially now hire better than I do. And the idea of saying, hey, like, and a best practice was like, hey, if you want to get to the next role and get promoted, you have to fire yourself. And I would say you have to hire yourself and you have to train the next
Yeah.
person. And I think that was like a really good best practice that I would share.
No, yeah, 100%. I feel like you bring up something that's real important, and that is just time,
Yeah.
right? Like sometimes it is as simple as just spending more time with your first hire,
Yeah.
right? Like teaching them how you think, how do you do business, how do you make decisions, how do you talk to your clients, how do you talk to
Mhm.
your prospects? Because at the end of the day, they are pretty much going to do one of those two things, right? Like
Yeah.
they are either helping you with the relationship with your clients on the client success side of it, or they're helping you either set appointments or create content. So they also need to be really familiar with your voice, the language that you use, the analogies that you like. It's really funny because even right now that our team is around 12 people, I would say that we all pretty much speak the same way that you do, right? And I feel like that is really an interesting way of showing how seriously you take that, right? Like spending time with the team, pouring into them, and teaching them why do you think the way that you think, instead of just assuming that they will consume the content that you have created before and that's how they will get it, right? So sometimes it's as simple as that. Prioritize spending time with them.
So we talked a lot about the hiring process. Let's talk about what are the different roles that could be outsourced for a career coach. And we can maybe start from the top of the funnel all the way down
Yeah,
to the bottom, and then client success and everything else. So like, what are the roles that you think could be outsourced?
yeah. No, I feel like you have the right approach in terms of looking at it. That's how the way that I like to explain it to the clients, because you're not hiring for a role that you have never done before. That's the most crucial thing that you need to know, especially as you're starting out. The things that you want to have, those can wait. First, we need to get your business to a point in which it's actually generating consistent revenue, right? Then you can go ahead and invest into new projects and interesting skill sets that you may not have yourself. But at the beginning, we are prioritizing delegating out your funnel. So where does your funnel start? It's usually something related to marketing. So that's one role that you could
Mhm.
hire for. You could hire someone that is creating the content for you in the different like social media pages
Yeah.
that you may have. I would not say that this is the first thing that you delegate out. Like this is probably a later on hire, but if we take a look at the funnel, it's one role that you could hire for. The first and most important one should be, how do you set up appointments? So do you have an SDR? Do you have an appointment setter? Do you have a lead gen specialist? That should be the first thing that you prioritize. So someone that is constantly filling up your calendar. Following with the funnel, what's the next step? Sales goals.
So let's slow down here. I
Yeah.
would say for 80, 90+%, if I was to put entrepreneurship
Mhm.
math here, the first hire or outsource becomes a somebody that's doing leads to sales calls, appointment setter,
Yeah.
as SDR. Oh, I just bit myself. SDR. And you can either hire an agency or you can hire somebody.
Uh
To
huh.
me, if I were to choose, I would hire that somebody internally so they can speak like
Yeah.
you. You protect the brand, you protect that there. You then move to sales, but I would actually say here's where the second potential hire, if you hate writing content, is now that you have an appointment setter that's generating you more sales calls. And this should, like, if you're doing this all yourself, you should get to a point where you're doing 2 to 4 clients a month at a high ticket sale. So that would be the appointment setter will then pay for itself because it's able to get you more revenue. Now you have a little bit more money to reinvest into your business. And if you hate creating content and you don't like content, it takes you over a day, over 8 hours a week to write 5 LinkedIn posts. I would then say delegate, hire a ghostwriter. I do not think this needs to be a full-time hire right now. I think this for appointments that are internal hire, I would say ghostwriting, somebody to write your LinkedIn content. I think that's
Mhm.
probably better off to somebody with a higher skill set of a proven way of writing content for career coaches. Again, shout out, I would recommend Miguel from Grit and put him out there, right? That's going to make lead gen even easier for your appointment setter. His conversion rate, it will be higher. That leads to more sales calls. Now, that becomes to the third point of the third person that you could potentially bring in at this point then becomes a sales person. and I'm going to take this one. You can then take on after this one because
Sounds
sales
good.
is like more on my realm. What we found is the good thing about sales is that if you have a really good offer and you're converting yourself already 20, 30%, and you can get more than 20 sales calls a week. I think that the really sweet spot is minimum 15 sales calls a week or more. You now are able to bring in a high ticket closer at commission only. So there's tons of high ticket communities. The one that we found really good, finding good talent, is the She Sells community. And these people are contractors. They're kind of trained already on high ticket sales. You just got to train them on your offer, and you can just pay them commission. So it's 10% is the going rate on that. I will tell you, mistake that I've seen clients make or people that come, like that we've worked with, is they hire up salespeople from different countries and they pay them a base, and that just generally has not worked out. We have not seen that successfully worked out. I think if you're selling to people in North America or Europe, hiring someone that's native to that language and has that executive presence that matches your ideal customer profile is worth the 10% commission that you should do. If you don't have 10 to 15 sales calls a week yet, like the appointment setting hasn't hit the stride, then it is probably better for you to take those calls yourself until you could do that. Now, let's say whether you're taking the sales calls yourself or you hire a high ticket closer, right, to do the sales for you, which in an ideal world that it works really well. Your next bottleneck becomes that you don't have enough time for delivery, and this is where I will let you take over on what's the first hire and things you could do.
So this is where things start to get interesting, because client success is something that is deeply personal to the way that you end up developing your offer. For most coaches, that might look like a client success manager, a CSM. What does a CSM do? Whatever you want them to do, right? Like, it's based on the job description that you create. But it might look like coordinating your relationship with your clients, the appointments, the events, the community, more of the admin side of client success that ends up being pretty time consuming the more clients that you get. So I wouldn't say that you're gonna delegate out all of your one-on-one coaching, if that's the way that you're doing it right now, to someone that you hire to do client success. But the main thing that you're gonna be able to delegate, it's actually that back and forth, answering questions, pointing them out to the right resource, following up with them, holding them accountable, updating the calendar, thinking about new events, updating new resources. All of those are things that if you have someone whose number one priority is owning your client success department, then you're going to be able to just focus on one-on-one coaching. And that's how you're going to be able to increase basically your spots available and the capacity that you have, or working with more clients at a time. Then, now that we're talking, of course, about client success.
Before we go there, like a good analogy that we use a lot when communicating to our clients on the power of a client like success manager is I want you to think yourself as the doctor, right? And think about when you go to your yearly checkup with the doctor's office, right? And what happens? So you walk into the doctor's office, and does the doctor open the door and greet you? No, there's probably some sort of an administrative receptionist that welcomes you in, checks where you are in the calendar, make sure that they have your right insurance information, that they have the address, that they have your pharmacy, just in case that there needs to be prescriptions that needs to be sent over. And then they'll have you wait, and somebody calls you in. What happens next? Does the doctor come in and say, hey, Daniel, we're ready to see you now? No, it's usually a nurse practitioner, a technician, but it's not the doctor, right? And then what does the nurse do in that scenario? They're the ones who check, they put you on the scale, they check your viral, they do the things that the nurse can do. And then they put you in a little room. And if you remember, probably if you've gone to an office that looks like mine, I've gone to, probably looks the same. A primary doctor office has probably like anywhere between like 3 to 10 different rooms. And that's because that's how many visits a doctor can do in 1 hour, right? And so what happens is the doctor then comes into your room and only does what the doctor can do, right? He does the things that he went to medical school for, and he's able to prescribe the medicine that he's able to prescribe. He's able to ask the question that the doctor can do because of his years of experience can do. But 80-90% of the interaction, even after the doctor leaves, you go and check out back to the receptionist, and you pay your bill, you don't do it with the doctor, and then the prescription is sent to your pharmacy. All of that allows the doctor to see 5 to 10 patients in 1 hour. And all of that work, the admin work and the nurse's job can be done by the client success manager. So to me, that's what happens. Like before hiring another doctor or bringing in another career coach or bringing in a partner or bringing in a recruiter that needs to make $100,000, I think that there is a place for you to maximize and leverage client success delivery on the 80% that's the same for every single one of your clients. And that's why when we build the hybrid programs that we do within Opny operating system, we design them in mind so that a career coach like yourself can actually work with 3 to 4 times more clients without first bringing in other doctors. And so that's the role to us of what the client success manager will do. And again, they don't need to have 10, 20 years of experience in corporate to do a lot of this work.
Yeah, definitely. But again, you bring up something that's really important, and is that at the end of the day, it's a repeatable process.
Yep.
Right. So then that's where you need to make sure that you're always thinking about processes and how can you make it repeatable for all of the clients that you're going to continue serving. Right. I'm not saying that you have to build out your processes, those processes yourself, right? But it's definitely one of the skill set that you need to look for in a client success manager if you end up deciding to hire one, right? Like someone that is able to document what this whole process looks like from onboarding to a success call once they actually get the transformation that they were looking for. So you can actually ensure that this is repeatable, that every single one of your clients is going through that same exact mechanism, because it basically guarantees results, it guarantees success.
What would you say is the amount of clients, job seekers that a client success manager can manage for you?
That's
like,
a
what's
hard
a range?
one to
Like what's like
answer.
if you were to put a range into
I
it?
feel like the issue is that the range is really big, right? Like if you are a really high touch, done for you program and your offer reflects that, and there's a lot of interactions that both the client success manager and yourself are having with the client, then of course the number will be less because they're going to have more work per client too. If it's more like the hybrid program that we build like within the operating system at Opny, you're looking at a range between, I would say, 50 and 70 clients, depending, of course, on the work that they're doing. This is for really specific done for you items, and they are not doing any one-on-ones. They are not taking any calls. Their job is to handle the coordination, the back and forth, answering questions, pointing them out to the right resource, maybe taking care of onboarding, right? Like if you're doing an onboarding call, they're joining in with you, but they are not handling the one-on-one coaching sessions. That's the one thing that I want to make really clear, because that's actually another hire that you could potentially make. But yeah, I would say like that's a pretty consistent range that I've seen across different clients. Of course, the number can be higher if your offer looks a little bit different, but that's in most cases where you will find yourself at.
Yeah. And then you just mentioned the next potential hire at this point in the funnel then becomes bringing in other doctors or other coaches and even
specialists,
or even to your point, specialists. So like if you're the primary doctor and you want to bring someone that specializes and you are coming from a hiring manager's point of view, maybe you bring in recruiters to help you do that. Or maybe you bring in resume writers to just do the resume and the LinkedIn or the branded materials, which is something that our clients are doing a lot for their clients, right? And I would say there, I actually would suggest do not hire a full-time W-2 type of employee. We found a lot more success on building kind of like a small army of doctors or specialists that you can pay them hourly based on their experience, and having the client success manager kind of help manage those relationships and plug them in where as needed.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you bring up a really good point that I think really ties this all together, and that is really understanding how many hours of consistent work does someone have. Because the thing about part-time coaches, or this overall one-on-one sessions, coaching hours that you need to delegate out, they really depend on the amount of new clients and the issues and challenges that your clients are facing on a monthly basis. And this number really changes, right? This will become more consistent, and you're going to be able to budget better for what that looks like the longer that you have done this. But especially at the beginning, this number can change a lot. The amount of hours that you need from someone is not going to be 40 every single week. So a mistake that we have seen other coaches make is that they make the investment because most of the time part-time coaches are, you know, they share the same experience. They are a lot more expensive than, let's say, a CSM, right? And then they don't have enough work for them. So now
Yep.
you're paying a really, high salary for admin work.
Mm-hmm.
So then the ROI is not there, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you go back, you ask yourself, how much do I actually need from this person? And then you end up finding the right combination of background, skill set, years of experience, even location that then aligns with ultimately what is going to give you the result. But yeah, part time coaches are great. Don't hire a full time person. You're better off looking for different alternatives. You can actually increase the value of your program by providing different perspectives based on like
Yeah.
where the coach is coming from, and depending on your program, this is also a really great opportunity to add value to your clients that not many other programs are doing. In our case, for example, we used to have an immigration expert because we
Mm-hmm.
were working with a lot of international students that were navigating their own visa sponsorship and like visa status changes. So one of the really big perks that we had was that they did not have to pay for those consultations, right?
Yep.
If they just had like questions overall that they needed to get answered, we would bring them on and host those workshops ourselves. You don't need an immigration expert probably if you're not working with international
Like
students,
imagine if we
but
had
that
to
might look
pay
different.
a full-time salary of an immigration to be on
Yeah,
staff. Like that's hundreds of thousands of dollars to do
exactly.
that, right? And so, yeah, I think that's the key there. And I would tell you that's probably a very low barrier to entry to do, but high level activity is starting to bring in part-time coaches. To me, I wouldn't consider bringing in part-time coaches into your like onboarding 5 clients or more a month, and then you start outsourcing some of those like resume writing or interview prep are probably the first 2 things that we see are onboarding. I think a lot of coaches feel like they have their own secret recipe on the way that they're networking and applying, and maybe even salary negotiation. But outsourcing, like, I would say like the resume and the cover letter and the LinkedIn profile becomes more of a commodity. I've seen that being very outsourced very early on,
Yep.
to resume companies or resume services that are out there. That's great. If you want recommendations, send me a DM and we can send you some. Um, but I would say that is a really good activity. And I wouldn't even consider bringing in a full-time like director of coaching or somebody as a full-time coach aside from you into your onboarding at least like bare minimum 15, if not more like 20 clients a month, where this coach has at least 20 to 30 hours a week of one-on-one coaching with your clients, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's not, like, it doesn't make sense because you're better off paying $100 to $150 an hour, and it'll be cheaper than you hiring a W-2 employee. So it's like it's very balancing because it was about a couple of weeks ago I had a conversation with a very successful coach, and this person generated over $1.5 million in sales from his career coaching offer in 2025. And he's deciding to wind down his business. And a big part of it is because even though he generated that much in sales, he even had more expenses. So he actually lost money as a business. And when going and having that conversation, he told me it's because he overhired. He brought in the specialist, and I think he was paying the particular person that he had multiple coaches making over 6 figures and one making over $200,000. It's like, it's very difficult to build a business that way. Like for us, a rule of thumb is try to stay around 20% of revenue being allocated to the cost of delivery. So that's probably a different conversation that we can bring in, Salo, on like making sure that your business is staying within some profitable margins. But that's kind of how you think about hiring. Salo, to kind of wrap it up, I would say after client success, the next couple of hires would probably be CPA and lawyers. I think I'm going to just say I probably wouldn't bring in a full-time CPA to your business at this point, or a full-time lawyer. Like, I think we can clearly see that's more of like, let's go outsource that.
Yep.
But any best practices on those when you're thinking of hiring a CPA or even a lawyer?
I guess like it's all about what does your business actually need instead of what you think that your business needs, right? Like you probably don't need a bookkeeper and a CPA and a CFO and all of these different people that are involved if your business is generating less than 80,000 a month, right? Like you probably don't need that, right? Like complexity starts to build on the bigger that your revenue is.
Yep.
But I would say best practice, hire an office that it's meeting with you regularly, that is
Mhm.
explaining how to reconciling your accounts, that is filing your taxes for you. We have a recommendation of the one that we have used for this past few years. She's great.
She's amazing.
Um, and again, like it doesn't add unnecessary complexity. Like it's not like we have three different people that are involved taking a look
Mhm.
at our books. Actually, I would say that one of the biggest things that I like about my job, right? Like the highest leverage activities that I have is actually owning our finances. So
Yep.
like even though we do have a CPA, I would still recommend that you learn how to analyze your P&L, that you understand where your expenses are going, that you understand what's the MRR that you're bringing in month after month. You need to know your P&L if you're planning on scaling your business. That's one
Yeah.
thing that you can delegate out regardless of how good your CPA is or how good your bookkeeper is, because probably you're not hiring a CFO. You need to be able to do that work yourself. So that's a suggestion. Make sure that you hire a CPA so they can take care of like all of the filing and that part that it's definitely a lot more complex and tricky,
Yep.
right? Like we want to make sure that you don't get any fines, but you don't need anything else like that. Just rely on a CPA that is taking charge of your taxes. You also probably don't need a lawyer. If you're hoping to get someone to review your contract with clients and someone that you can go ahead and ask questions to from time to time, then you probably don't need to have like a really expensive law office or retainer, right? Like
Yep.
find a lawyer in your area that will charge you per hour so you can go, you can ask questions, you can review your agreement, and that's it. You don't need to go any further than that. Something that I've seen actually lately is that a lot of coaches are hiring product people, so someone that
Mm.
is going to help them with their automations or building out their own, AI processes, or like even optimizing their coaching system and stuff. That can be really expensive really fast. So this is where like things start to get tricky, and we would really need to get into your own P&L to understand if that type of investment makes sense. But I would say my suggestion is don't go overboard with the consultants or like the external people
Yep.
that you're bringing in, because that can definitely take a hit in your margins.
Yep. Salo, I think that was great. I think we were able to walk through the beginning from a coach starting out and hiring their first appointment setter SDR, all the
Yeah.
way to going and scaling your business to 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 plus clients a month, and how that would look like in a hiring your client success department, which scales. And if you are watching this, if you're a coach and you have any questions about this, send me a DM. We can have a conversation more about it. I would say this is very general advice, right? This is going to allow and help probably 80% of you. But if you feel like you have a unique situation, I would love the perspective on like hire internal, external agency or not. Like, what are the things that I should be outsourcing for more for your business? Let us know. Let me know. Send me a message. If you find value from this, don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you so much for being here on the Career Coaches podcast. See ya.
Thank you. Bye.